The Raiders just walked into an offseason that can flip their entire future. And the wild part is most people still have no idea what this front office is really building. Inside that building, they see a possible franchise quarterback in Fernando Mendoza, a superstar engine on defense in Max Crosby, and a brand new staff trying to line everything up before the window even opens. From the outside, it looks like another rebuild. From the inside, it feels like a countdown, where every decision they make in the next few months either launches this team toward real contention or wastes the best years they have in front of them. On offense, the pieces are quietly lining up in a way that should make every fan sit up. You already have Brock Bowers, who can take over a game from the tight end spot. Ashton Genty, ready to be a true lead back who can carry a heavy load. And the expectation that Fernando Mendoza is coming in as that pro-ready #1 pick who does not play scared. The surprise is what still sits in the shadows. There is no true wide receiver one yet, which is why a name like Brian Thomas Jr. keeps getting whispered around the league. There is still no clear answer on who actually walks out with the offense in Week 1. With Geno Smith on the roster, while talk grows around veterans like Derek Carr, Kirk Cousins, or Joe Flacco stepping in as a temporary pilot. Every one of those names pulls the story of this team in a different direction, and right now, the Raiders have not shown their hand. Then you look at the other side of the ball, and the picture gets even more serious. John Spyitech has stepped in as the new decision-maker. Clint Kubiak is putting in his system. Rob Leonard is shifting the group toward a new 3-4 identity. And through all that noise, Max Crosby is still the beating heart of the defense they are trying to build around. On paper, it is a lot of change, but the real story is the philosophy behind it. And Spyitech quietly revealed a big piece of that at the scouting combine, when he talked about how you protect a young rookie quarterback and what you ask him to carry in year 1. Once you hear those words and how carefully he chose them, the veteran quarterback talk and the whole plan at that position start to look very different. But before we get into that, hit that like and subscribe button for more Raiders and all the NFL content. Let's aim for 500 likes on this video. The Raiders just watched their new general manager sit in front of the cameras and answer one simple question in a way that could change their whole season. This was not a casual combine soundbite. It was John Spyitech laying out what he thinks a young passer should face at the start of his career. He talked about not dumping all the pressure on a first-year starter, about keeping the hits off his body, about making sure the offense is not built around a kid trying to drag a team back every single Sunday. He even admitted he is not a fan of throwing a fresh quarterback straight into the fire if the rest of the roster is not ready. And that one idea sent a jolt through every conversation about what the Raiders are really planning. Once you really sit with those words, you start to see a blueprint hiding under the polite media answer. Spyitech kept circling back to support, not highlights, mentioning protection up front, a steady run game, and a defense that can hold opponents down, so the quarterback does not feel like he has to chase more than 30 points just to have a chance. That is a very specific picture of how he wants this group to win, and it sounds a lot more like a controlled, balanced attack than a wild shootout. For a fan base that has heard a lot of talk about splash plays in past years, hearing a general manager focus on shielding the most important player on the field before anything else is a serious change in tone. The part that really turns up the pressure is how all of this connects to Fernando Mendoza and the plan at quarterback. Everyone expects him to arrive as the face of the franchise. But Spyitech just told the league he is willing to slow the clock down if that gives his staff the best chance to grow a rookie the right way. That opens the door to an experienced starter taking the first snaps of the season, to a shorter ramp where Mendoza only steps in once the pieces around him are in place, and to a very real argument inside the building about timing, not talent. Once you see that tension, the next question comes fast, and it is no longer whether Mendoza is good enough. It is how long the Raiders can keep him on the sideline before everyone starts demanding that #1 pick runs the huddle. You do not talk about the Raiders' future for very long before everything circles back to Fernando Mendoza. This is not a normal prospect. This is a national champion, a Heisman winner, covered, and a player whose own teammates stand in front of microphones and light up when they are asked about him. Linebacker Aiden Fisher did not talk about arm strength first. He talked about how Mendoza made him a better leader, how he walked into fourth quarters with real noise around him and still carried calm on his face. When a defender who lived those moments says the quarterback raises the standard of the whole room, that is not hype. That is proof of how rare this guy already feels. That is why the patience talk around a rookie like this hits different. There's a simple argument for waiting that every front office understands. You buy time, you let the game slow down from the sideline, you protect the investment. But Fernando Mendoza is not coming from a quiet college life. He has already dealt with loud stadiums, real pressure, it's to real expectations. Games like the Penn State trip are not theory, they are tape. He walked into those spots, smiled, and went right at a defense that wanted to knock him out of the game. When you watch that and then hear people compare his poise to Joe Burrow, with a floor that lives in the range of Jared Goff and Kirk Cousins, it becomes fair to ask how much he would really gain from months of standing on the sideline with a cap on his head instead of a helmet. So now, the timeline becomes the real fight, not the talent question. How long can a staff hold back a rookie who already looks mentally ready before the locker room starts to feel it, before the fan base starts asking why the player who changes the whole ceiling of the team is only holding a tablet? Do you give him a small runway and circle a date where he takes over? Or do you hand him the ball from day one and live with the growing pains? That choice pulls straight into the next piece of this story, because the answer will depend on which veteran they trust to stand in front of him, to handle the first snaps, and to show everyone what kind of offense this new regime really wants to run. If the Raiders really believe Fernando Mendoza is the future, the most important short-term decision might actually be the veteran they park in front of him. One contract, one name on that depth chart can tell the whole league whether this staff is willing to slow the story down or rush straight into the fire. Pick the wrong guy and you send mixed signals in the locker room. Pick the right one and you buy time, leadership, and real teaching for a rookie who is about to step into a loud huddle for the first time on Sundays. This is not just about finding someone who can throw. It is about choosing a personality, a voice, and a style that matches what Clint Kubiak wants this offense to be, while the kid watches, learns, and eventually takes the job. Look at the names being floated, and you can feel how different each path would look. Bring back Derek Carr, and you get someone who already knows what it feels like to carry the Raiders logo in prime time. Someone who has worked with Kubiak before and can run a timing-based attack without blinking. Call Kirk Cousins, and you are chasing one of the cleanest pocket operators of this era, a quarterback who has put up top-level seasons in systems very similar to what Kubiak calls, but who will not come cheap after a long career of winning every negotiation. Talk yourself into Joe Flacco, and the bet is on toughness, experience, and a low-cost veteran who has seen every coverage a defense can throw at him. Keep Geno Smith in the room, and you are choosing familiarity with the current roster and a player who still has real talent, but also one whose relationship with the fan base has already been tested. Every option comes with a different price in money, in expectation, and in how long Fernando Mendoza waits before he is handed the keys. That is why this move feels bigger than just filling a depth chart line. The veteran they pick will decide how honest the staff can be when they talk about competition, how quickly they can shift the offense toward the strengths of their young passer, and how the rest of the roster reads the timeline for winning. If they chase the top of the market, it might signal a push to steal wins right now before the defense is fully rebuilt. If they lean toward a shorter, cheaper bridge, it tells you they are already planning for the moment that number one pick steps in and never looks back. And while all of that is happening on offense, Rob Leonard is quietly flipping the entire structure of the defense, moving into a new 3-4 world that will demand fresh pieces and a different kind of chaos up front. Starting with how they unlock Max Crosby in this new look. The Raiders just signaled that this defense is not going to look or feel the same anymore, and the biggest proof is the move into a true 3-4 world, with Max Crosby still right in the center of the plan. For years, he lined up as that every down edge in a 4-3 front, hand in the dirt, snap after snap, carrying a huge share of the workload. Now Rob Leonard wants him moving around, sometimes standing up, sometimes crashing inside, sometimes wide out in space, where tackles cannot grab him the same way. That change alone tells you this staff is not here to tweak what they inherited. They want to build a structure that takes the best player on the unit and gives him more ways to ruin a drive instead of asking him to fight the same battle every play. Once you start mapping out the front seven in this new shape, you can see why the combine meetings and free agency buzz matter so much. A longer, powerful frame like Tyree Wilson suddenly makes sense as a 3-4 end who can set the edge and squeeze the pocket. A player like Malcolm Kuntz looks more natural as an outside linebacker who can attack from a 2-point stance. A flexible piece, such as Tonka Hemingway, can slide between roles as the coaches test different looks. But all of that still leaves clear holes. This defense needs a real nose tackle who can sit on the center and swallow double teams, which is why a massive prospect like Lee Hunter jumps out when you see the Raiders spending time with him. On top of that, they need at least 2 true inside linebackers and more depth behind them, with names like Devin Lloyd, Leo Chenal, Nakobe Dean, and Key Walker fitting the kind of physical attacking style that can clean up behind those big bodies. The reason Rob Leonard feels like the right architect for this is the background he brings from coaches like Mike McDonald and Brian Flores, where 3-4 looks are not just for show. They are tools to create confusion and pressure from every angle. In that world, any of the 4 linebackers can rush or drop. Fronts can shift into 5-man pictures before the snap, and quarterbacks have to guess who is really coming. The cost is simple. You need fresh legs up front and a roster that can play fast for 4 quarters, which means the offense has to help by staying on schedule and leaning on the run, so this defense does not live on the field. That is where Klint Kubiak and Ashton Jeanty come back into focus, because the way they build the backfield and share the carries will decide how much freedom Leonard has to turn this new structure into a relentless attacking group. The Raiders can talk about scheme, fronts, and coverage all day, but the truth is simple. If this team does not run the ball with real authority, everything around Fernando Mendoza gets harder from the first snap. A young passer in this league needs drives that start on schedule, second and short, instead of third and long. Play action looks where linebackers are stepping forward in panic because they respect the backfield. That is why the way they build around Ashton Jeanty is not a side note. It is the spine of the whole plan. A physical, patient ground attack gives the new defense time to breathe, keeps Max Crosby fresh for the fourth quarter, and turns every possession into a chance to control the game instead of chasing it. This is not just about handing the ball off. It is about taking pressure off a rookie before the ball is even snapped. Klint Kubiak has been clear that he does not want one player taking every hit in the backfield, and that should make Raiders fans think about a true 2-back setup, not a one-man show. Let Ashton Jeanty be the tone setter, the back who gets the early carries and forces defenses to tackle him again and again, but pair him with another trusted runner who can step in without the offense skipping a beat. Imagine a second back in that room with the frame and attitude of a player like Tyler Allgeier, the balance and vision of someone like Brian Robinson, or the burst of a healthy J.K. Dobbins or Raheem Mostert. You are not chasing names for headlines, you are chasing a style. 2 backs who can share the load, catch the ball, protect on third down, and keep defenses guessing where the ball is going. If they get that room right, every fake, every bootleg, every movement concept Kubiak calls for Fernando Mendoza becomes that much more dangerous, because the linebackers already believe the run can hurt them. There's another piece that quietly changes everything, and Kubiak hinted at it when he talked about wanting a fullback or tight end fullback type in this system. A player built like Riley Nowakowski, a familiar face, such as Alec Ingold. A punishing run game with a real fullback does more than move piles. It wears out safeties and corners who have to step into the box. And that is when a quarterback like Fernando Mendoza starts finding one-on-ones outside. Once the backfield is built the right way, and the front seven has to respect every run fit, the next question becomes obvious. Who is going to be on the other end of those deep shots? And is a true outside threat, like Brian Thomas Jr., worth the price to be that final piece for this offense? Right now, the loudest question around the Raiders is whether they are ready to give Fernando Mendoza a true outside star by going after Brian Thomas Jr. He is a big, fast wideout who has already shown real number one upside, but Jacksonville will want serious value back, likely in the range of a second-round pick, while this roster still needs help on the offensive line and on defense. The Raiders already lean on Brock Bowers as a main target, have young receivers like Jack Besh and Dante Thornton Jr. trying to grow, and the memory of moving on from Jacoby Myers still fresh, plus other possible options such as Alec Pierce, Romeo Doubs, or George Pickens that could be had without sending away so much draft capital. If they pay the price for Brian Thomas Jr., it screams that they are ready to load up around Fernando Mendoza and attack deep right away. But if they keep their picks, it signals John Spyitech is still focused on building the lines and letting Klint Kubiak and his quarterback raise younger, cheaper weapons over time. And the way their meetings and rumors shake out over the spring will quietly show which path they have truly chosen. At the Combine, the Raiders are quietly telling you who they want to be, just by where they stand and who they talk to. John Spyitech will be locked in on how Fernando Mendoza handles the room. Rob Leonard will be tracking front seven help around Max Crosby with big bodies like Tonka Hemingway and Lee Hunter, and Klint Kubiak will be eyeing backs and role players who can really fit next to Ashton Genty. At the same time, reports tying the team to Brian Thomas Jr. and other offensive pieces will show how aggressive they are willing to be around their future quarterback. Put it all together, and the positions they focus on in Indianapolis will quietly reveal whether this regime is loading up to push now or slow building the core before they fully hand this team to Fernando Mendoza.